Hello everyone, how are you doing? Roughly on time. I've done something very silly, which was to update OBS minutes before starting this. So if the sound or the picture is rubbish, let me know. It's because I've done broken the number one rule of going live. Also, I realised my lighting wasn't good, I think. Oh, that's better. Okay, great. Just need to turn that one up. I shouldn't really have my camera on auto adjust, and I should have all my lighting settings saved, but I just don't. It's not very professional here, I'm afraid. Too much. I think the light's now sorted out. It should have. It's not too much light that's the issue. It's that because I have 3 lights, and it's when one of them is brighter than the others, the auto adjust doesn't work. But I think now it's correct. It looks good to me anyway. We know the level of professionalism. We've seen the comics. Yeah, exactly. You've seen it. Audio and video 10 out of 10. Good stuff. Nice. And hopefully it's a bit louder now. I know at the start people complaining it was too quiet for the first 6 months of me doing this, but it should be better now. We haven't got loads of stuff to go through today, partly because there's just been a few major things and nothing else. Partly because I'm going on holiday next week and I'm feeling a bit burnt out and I just cannot wait. And I don't really want to go scouring the internet for the worst things to talk about. However, my eyes look tired. Thank you very much. Well, I'll just take that as just a general insult and ignore it, I think. I was actually looking to see if I could find something else to respond to, because I felt like when I've responded to J.K. Rowling or Richard Dawkins, when they've come at me, it's been kind of good. It's been kind of reassuring when someone's like, oh, have you seen this horrible person's gone for you? Like, oh God, oh, what have they said? Have they made me look like an idiot? And then you see what they say and you're like, oh, okay, this is rubbish. So I just went looking on. I know you didn't mean to insult me. It's okay. So I just went looking on YouTube to see if anyone had done videos about me, and I found 3 people who had. One of them was a right-wing trans woman who looks like they're after attention, and I don't really want to give them any attention. It's kind of embarrassing. Plus, it's 2-hour. A long video. I can't be asked for that. It's not very exciting. One of them was from a gender critical woman from years and years ago, who I don't think is a relevant person, and it just looked really low quality and rubbish, so I didn't bother with that. And one was a guy who did a 4-part 4+ hours of debunking my cartoons. And I was like, oh, okay, this could be funny to respond to, but then it's hours long, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna find some of I just opened one of them. I just opened part 2, scrolled to the middle, and he brought up some cartoon, and I watched 3 or 4 of his debunks my cartoons, and they were just really rubbish. But they weren't. For most of them, he's like, wow, I don't really understand what this means, and I've never seen anyone say this, and well, I guess that could be true. Next. And I was just like, he wasn't really committing to any positions. He wasn't really doing anything. And I just thought, this is just lame. Had a lot of views, though. One of the parts had 4,000 views or something. Which is, I'm amazed anyone sat through that. I guess if you're desperate for, dunking on trans people or desperate for validation or something. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't even really feel worth my effort. So I don't know. Hopefully, I've got a plan for the future. So I'm just kind of rambling off at the start here a bit. I've got a plan to do a more structured argument explaining in full with diagrams why sex isn't binary, and to try and be really confrontational with it. Like, here's the full argument, respond to it. You can't. And maybe try and force that in front of all of the gender criticals and stuff to try and get them to actually respond to it. Because some of them will at least attempt to respond to it. Most of them will do what, like, their cartoons guy, and they'll just be like, well, what does this even mean? Katie's stupid. And that'll be it. But some of them will, and it'll be amazing when they try and fail. But anyway, maybe you guys don't even care about someone dunking on me. It's a bit of an ego thing when you're like, oh, Richard Dawkins has responded to me. It's like, all right, who the fuck are you, mate? But yeah. So yeah, I've got 5 things to cover, but I want to cover 6 things. So I went into my like spare things to cover folder, which is now empty, and it just had one thing. I don't really know if it's worth covering, but we might. But I thought if anyone has any questions they want to ask, don't ask him now. Think about or right, you've got 2 options. You could either ask them at any point you like via super chat, but you don't have to. That is just one option, and when I come to super chats, I will see it and I will answer it. Or the other option is, after we've done a couple of segments, I'll be like, okay, if you have questions, go for it now, and then write them in the chat, and then I'll try and see if I can see any good ones. About like anything, I guess, in case it's something worth discussing. And just to be transparent, I want to have 6 segments so that when I go away on holiday next week, I will have 1 video every single day until my next stream, which is going to be in 2 weeks' time. So that's all we need. Enough things to cover, because I think it's good for the algorithm to just keep putting videos out. You don't have to watch them, but they seem to be doing all right. I hate the way YouTube shows ads during live streams now. I have seen that that's a change because they announced it to me on the back end. There's even a button I can press to insert adverts or delay adverts. But I don't ever bother. I probably should do if I go for a wee or something, shouldn't I? Because then it won't interrupt you. But I also saw it plays them like alongside, but I haven't watched a live stream since they've done that, so I don't know what it looks like. But yeah, right, okay. I also wanted to just say something good. So I thought we could start on something good. Then we've got like 1 piece of good news, which isn't really that good or bad. Start off on something good, and then maybe the last segment we'll cover will be just me laughing at some idiots. But so this last week, or this last weekend, I went away for the weekend. I'm stacking up the holidays. It's getting to summer. I just feel like burnt out. I need to do something. So after work, drove to Cornwall, which is fucking far, and just camped there for 2 nights. And went to a beach, and it was just super nice. It was really nice to be in the good weather, and I like good weather and hot and sun and stuff. Did some hikes, went swimming in the sea naked. There's this like really nice beach somewhere. There's loads of beaches in Cornwall. It's like the only place in England that has good beaches. If you are a non-British person and you're from Northern Ireland maybe, and you want to come over to the mainland, and you're like, where in this island is there good beaches? You've got to go to Wales or Scotland or Cornwall, and that is it. But yeah, so there's some nice beaches. We went to one, and there was loads of people swimming there naked, and we're just like, might as well join in. And I guess the reason I want to say this is not just to say it. 2 things. One was going away and not having the internet, because the internet down there is terrible. um, was really good. And being out in this nature, and I saw some really cool insects. I saw some dragonflies mating, which was really cool. Um, saw some really cool stuff. The giant caterpillar, but also just like being away is very refreshing, and it made me come back and have a lot of energy for stuff. And I think it's good to remember right now that whenever you look at politics, everything is just absolutely fucking horrific all the time, getting worse all the time. Again, today it's worse again than it was yesterday, and it's just terrible. Um, oh yeah, okay, Devon has nice beaches too. But when you, and that can just be so depressing, it can make you feel horrible all the time. And it's good to remember that you can escape it. I know that I had the luxury of having a weekend off and enough money to be able to drive to Cornwall and pay for camping and to have a tent. And not everyone can do all those things, but maybe if you can just get to your nearest forest and just spend the entire day there, like get there early, or to a river, or just something. It really does work. I know it always seems like I hate it so much when I say I'm really stressed about politics, and then my mum's like, why don't you go outside? And I'm like, that's not going to fucking fix politics, is it, mum? Come on. But she is right that going outside resets your mental health and makes, just does make your life feel a bit better. The other good thing about it was it just again reminded me of like how freeing it is for me personally to have got to a point in transition where I feel I can do that, and just be not mortified at the idea that someone might see my horrible body. I don't think that my body is like model worthy or anything to write home about, but it's just mine, and it's like good enough. And I just yeah, and it's just when you do something like that, it's just this, you can't help but think of all the times in the past when pre-transition and during transition when just something like that wouldn't have been something that I would have ever dreamed of, because it would have just been horrific for me, like it's just so horrible. And I'm not saying this to like show off or flex or gloat or anything. I know that not everyone is in a position to be able to ever get here or get here now. Transition might be completely out of reach, or you might not be able to get there anytime soon, or even you might be in a position where the body you'd feel most comfortable in wouldn't be one you'd be comfortable being around strangers with, because maybe they would make assumptions about you because you would be different to most people or something. I guess what I want to say it for is there are a bunch of people out there who are probably feeling very, like people early on in transition, or who haven't come out yet, or who are just generally in transition and feeling very deflated. And I guess I want to make it like super clear that I had a good time and felt super free. It's like I was talking recently about not feeling free since the Supreme Court ruling, because everything just feels so oppressive from the government. And again, it has done this week, but getting away and then just being in nature and just being like me, my body, is felt free again. And it is possible to get there, and it's not easy to get here, and it costs too much money, and you need good luck with genetics and medication and all kinds of things, but it is possible for some people, and for anyone who is worried about whether it's worth it. If you can get to where you're happy, then it is super worth it. And I'm not saying, I feel like there's so many caveats to this. I'm not saying it's not worth it if you can't get to a position where I am. Unless your sole goal of your life is to go naked swimming and be comfortable, then there are other things much earlier in transition where I felt physically freer. Even just when I finally came out to everyone, I just felt so free compared to what I'd done before. And that was before medical transition. And then when I started passing, I just felt so free. And that was before any surgeries. And then when I had face surgery, I just felt so free again because it was like another weight off. And all of the steps along that journey are still liberating. And are worth it. And I think if I hadn't have been able to get to the position I'm in now, I wouldn't think, oh, it wouldn't have been worth it then. So, I think, to be honest, I think if the only part of transition I'd ever done was come out to people and get laser hair removal, it would still be worth it because I hate having secrets, and not having any secrets anymore is perfect, so good. And I also just fucking hated having facial hair, and no longer do, so that's amazing. But yeah, so no, I've never played strip poker. I'm not saying I wouldn't play strip poker, but I am saying I wouldn't play strip poker on stream. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I know a lot of trans people haven't been swimming. So okay, just on that. That's another little aside. Sorry, I'm going to do a little asides because there isn't that much to cover. But it's still going to be a good show. Don't leave. There's still some good stuff to talk about. There's going to be some rants. I know that a lot of trans people in various stages of transition feel like they can't go swimming. And I think that's because of their bodies and because of judgment and all this other kind of stuff. And I think that's a valid feeling to have. And you've got to consider your own safety and mental health, etc. first. However, I also know that there are some people who are like, I've not had surgery, so I can't go, like, I've not had genital surgery, so I can't go swimming. And I just want to say it is absolutely possible to, if you're a trans woman, because I did it previously. I don't know about trans men. Presumably you also could. Anyway, I don't know the situation, but I actually did a week-long holiday in Slovenia where we're just in bikinis basically the whole time. From like the moment you wake up until like 10 p.m. when it's hot enough to put on shorts and a t-shirt, or cool enough, sorry. And that involved going in the water and out the water and getting drunk and using like portaloos and all kinds of stuff. And no one, as far as I know, suspected anything. No one said anything. There was no issues. I didn't have any issues. And you do need to be very planned in exactly how you're going to manage that situation. It's not just something you could just go and do without planning and stuff, but it's totally possible. I might as well tell you the details of it. For dealing with downstairs, I had this like swimmer's muscle tape, which sticks to your skin. You can just put it on your arm or your leg or something. Is to help you. You can get this sports tape stuff for going to the gym, and it like helps your muscles. I don't know. I don't know fucking anything about fitness. But there's a special swimmer's one, and it's not cheap, but it sticks in the water. It can get wet and still be sticky, and it lasts like several hours or something. I think it might last like 10 hours or so. It lasts a long time, and just the combination of that and bikini bottoms is enough to like be totally fine. And it can even unstick, so you can go to the toilet and then stick again a couple of times, and then you can just have like a waterproof bag. I don't know if you were going on like a swimming pool kind of holiday, if you could, but then you could just use a toilet and get somewhere dry. But I was in a situation where it's literally like you're floating down the river, You get out and everyone has a drink on the side, and there's like a portaloo, and that is it. And then you go to the toilet, and you have to be able to like deal with this. And yeah, I just had a waterproof bag with a bit more tape in it, and was just able to totally handle that situation. Literally for a full week with no issues. So you can do it. I don't know how much the tape isn't like prohibitively expensive, but it's not cheap. I can't remember how much it is, but it's like when you see how much it is, you're like, ugh, but it's still worth it. And shit, maybe I could just find it and just show you. Do we have it on here? I guess it's this kind of stuff. I'm just trying to find the actual brand that I used so I can actually recommend you one. Is it this one? No. Oh, yeah, it's called KT tape. That's it. Because it's like Katie. Uh-huh. Yeah, so it's like this stuff. It's like KT swimming tape. It's just a brand. There's other tapes. I'm not sponsored by this brand or anything. I think it was literally this one. Yeah, and it's like 20 quid. But that's like enough tape to do you several years worth of swimming holidays if you have one holiday, yeah. So, recommended. And it's totally possible. So don't feel like you can't do it. And I know a lot of trans people say they can't do it, and that's totally fair. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but also if you might just only ever see other people saying you can't do it, and you might be put off from ever trying to solve the issue. And if the only issue is that, then that's a solvable issue. And I can tell you for a fact that I solved that issue, and it was fine. Anyway, Gorilla Glue. Yeah, that might. Well, I don't know if that would work as a charm because it probably can't tolerate the constant movement and the water. It probably wouldn't work at all. But I'm sure there is like some waterproof super glue, which would be not a good idea. Really expensive tape you should buy. Katie tape. I see it on here. Yeah. I'm not sponsored by Katie tape. I don't own Katie tape the brand. Though that is a suspicious name for sure. Anyway, one last thing before we move on to the main parts of the episode. I also went in a Pokemon tournament on a Monday, and I won it, first one of the season, so pretty pleased with that. So yeah, I had a good 3 days, like, in nature, and then winning some Pokemon, so I felt really good. And then I looked at politics again on Tuesday, and it was fucking shit. So why don't we start off, seeing as we've just been talking about swimming, why don't we start off with something about swimming? So this is the latest gender critical plot to make the world worse. I feel quite negative about all this stuff. I'm sure that they'll just get this to work. So I think I will. Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that. But so there's this pond in London, which I've never been to. And it literally does look like a pond. It looks like a very British watercolor of like dark green with bits floating in it. But this is, for some reason, one of the things that the transphobes are absolutely enraged about. And I presume it's because it's in like London and maybe middle class people go there. Um, but this pond has been women only for a long time, and it's always allowed trans people, trans women in particular. Um, and now that they've got the horrific Supreme Court ruling, the gender critical movement is going to look to do the next incremental step. And obviously, this is the strategy. It's the same as the anti-abortionists movement. They just throw loads of different court cases out, hundreds and hundreds of them, and then one or two of them will succeed because they'll get lucky, or they get a bad lawyer or a bad defense or a bad judge in most cases. And then as soon as they land, they don't care about the ones they lose. They then try and build on top of those wins they have, and they just do these tiny little incremental steps, and then it gets to the point where they have like a Supreme Court ruling. But now this is the next incremental step, and what they're going to try and do is try and make a legal claim against this pond, and they're going to say you have to ban trans women or allow cis men. That's going to be their argument. Of course, it is by Sex Matters, which is Mayor Forstater and Helen Joyce and others. They're like the main gender critical organisation in the UK now. There was quite a lot of them for a while. There was like Women's Place UK and Posey Parker's one, whatever that was called, and all of these other like smaller WDI and all this kind of stuff. Sex Matters have kind of risen up to be the main one, and I think it's because they're funded by J.K. Rowling and other right-wing groups. LGB Alliance are probably the second biggest one. I think they're probably both Tufton Street organisations, if that means anything to you. But Sex Matters are like the main one, and so obviously they're doing this like thing. I doubt anyone from Sex Matters has ever gone here. They'll find some claimant of someone who lives nearby who once went, who will say they were terrified because a trans person, or they thought they saw a trans person. So anyway, this says a row at Hampstead Heath Ponds over permission for trans women to continue swimming at the ladies' pond could reach the High Court. Probably will. We'll probably lose. The campaign group, the anti-trans hate group, Sex Matters, is making a £50,000 legal claim. This money is just meaningless to them. Like, they have unlimited funds. Against the City of London, which runs the bathing ponds on Hampstead Heath. So, of course, if the City of London Corporation loses, I'm sure they won't bother repealing it because they won't care and they won't want to spend the money. This is an article by The Times, by the way, which is like the main anti-trans newspaper in the UK. Worse than the Daily Mail. As bad as the Telegraph. Worse than the Guardian. Would you believe it? But even they keep muddling up with their propaganda. They've gone here since 2019. Trans women who were born biologically male. They haven't gone with who are biologically male, which is the the Sex Matters gender critical propaganda line. It's kind of odd that they've gone for this. But yeah, since 2019, trans women have been able to swim in the ladies' pond under formal guidance, but before that, they were never banned. So they've always been allowed to go there, but then the organisation that runs the pond wrote formal guidance 6 years ago. Critics say, this is like Mayor Forstater says, this is a breach of the law and that biological men, okay, so they're back to the propaganda line, should not have access to women-owned spaces. So this is like very transparently a group of people who don't use the service, who have no real issues, are trying to, who have unlimited money, are trying to find a case where they can harass someone who's trans inclusive and try and remove some of trans people's rights, freedoms, and ability to move in the world. The organisation that runs the pond is strengthening its policy of welcoming trans women to the ladies' pond and said that it was planning to put up signs to say that trans women could use the pond, changing rooms, and showers. And, like, to be clear, this isn't a naked pond specifically. This is, like, just swimming for women because you can go there without being harassed by men. So if trans women go there, it doesn't actually affect you at all. If an intersex woman goes there, a lesbian woman goes there, it doesn't affect you. This isn't about that. they might even admit that it doesn't affect them, that this is just about the principle of banning trans people from public. And again, it's against the wishes of the organization who runs it. But as this article has some bullshit from Mayor Force data. Mayor Force data, the chief of executive of Sex Matters says, blah blah blah. They weren't amazed. They're lying. Anyway, if you keep scrolling down, scrolling down, you eventually get to a little fact dump at the bottom of the article. And it says, volunteer group, the ladies' pond. Last year, in a meeting, the members voted to reject a motion that only those born female in sex can use the pond. So this is the members of this pond. And it was overwhelming. Like, there was a motion, should we be able to ban trans people? And it was, like, hugely rejected. It wasn't even close. And they also say... the ladies' pond is open to all women and girls over the age of 8, and according to lifeguards, trans women have been swimming here for many years without incident. So, deceptive of the times to put it at the bottom, but amazing they even put the facts in at the bottom at all. So I guess, well done to the Times. But they, like, this is the core thing. This is like a group that's coming out of nowhere, that isn't involved in this at all, pressuring an organization which is trans positive, that is like visited by a group of people who are overwhelmingly trans positive, and they're trying to mess up their whole situation. Like, lots of the cis women who go to this ponds will be friends with trans women too, because when you start going to swimming places and gym and stuff, you end up bumping into people and making friends with them. So this is coming attempting to tear apart the community, remove a safe space for some women, some of the most vulnerable women, trans women, for them to go swimming, just for the principle of hurting trans people and to incrementally remove more and more of our human rights. It's possible we'll win this. It's possible we'll lose this. If we win this, they will appeal it to the Supreme Court, and you know what that means. Obviously, they are attempting to just get a full countrywide ban of trans people in public. That is their final goal. They got the Supreme Court ruling, which removed trans women's protections from sexism from the Equality Act. And then they were hoping that the EHRC would be able to rush out this interim guidance that said, oh, we can just ban trans women from everything now, and trans men from everything now. But that kind of didn't work out. So now they've got to do this consultation, and they'll push out guidance that says the same thing, and then it'll have to be debated in Parliament, blah, 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 blah. There's not a guarantee that will go their way. So they also have to have an alternate route, which is going back to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court rules that you can't include trans women in women's spaces, then it will then become actually illegal to have trans-inclusive anything. Not just trans people are banned, but if you attempt to include trans people, you are breaking the law. That is their goal, obviously. So I don't think you should panic about that, because it's not imminent. But it's definitely their strategy, and I think it's important to be aware of what these hate groups are attempting to do, so you can be clear about it when you're talking to people and explain what's going on. Sex Matters absolutely wants to make it illegal for you to include trans people correctly. If you go on my channel and look back a bit, there was a recent clip of Akua Reindorf of the EHRC saying she believes that trans-inclusive organizations are or should be illegal. Simply can't work in the law. So that's absolutely what they're trying to do. So what happens if this passes? Well, we're gonna have to protest it, aren't we? That's like the only option, and that means just going there. And like, if you live in this area now, it's currently very trans inclusive. The people who go there are trans inclusive, and the management trans inclusive. So go and support them. Um, make it clear that if they do get in a situation where they have to consider appealing this, that they know that they have the support to do so, and that they should do so. And if we lose this and they don't appeal it, then it's time to go there all the time and protest it constantly, because it's just completely ridiculous. It's completely unenforceable. It's a very clear violation of human rights. It's just disgusting, really, to try and ban trans people from public. It's unjustifiable. The only way they can do it is like these authoritarian top-down measures where they try and spend a huge amount of money to worm through and get to corrupt people who would just change the law without considering trans people at all. And that's the only way they'll achieve anything. And that is how they're achieving things. Like especially with our current Labour government, just super corrupt. They don't seem to care what people want at all. So, yeah, it's worth being aware of what's going on. Do not panic. You can still go swimming, and you should still go swimming, because staying fit and healthy is very important. If anything, as fascism rises, more important than ever, because you need to be in the best mental health possible that you can in order to survive, and also the best physical health possible in order to survive. That's not me trying to fearmonger, by the way. It is beneficial. If you're not in peak physical and mental health condition, you absolutely can still survive. But obviously, with every thing that is harder for you, it will compound and it will be much harder. So, but yeah, just be aware of this stuff. Keep one eye on it and get ready to protest, because we're absolutely going to have to protest, and we will protest, and we will push back, and we will win this back if we lose this particular case. Will I ever get to visit the UK in my lifetime? Lord knows. I think it's probably safe to visit the UK as a trans person. Certainly if you stick to... Well, certainly if you come to Bristol. Oh, I never have any issue here. If you're watching this in the future, I don't know. It's safe as of July 2025. But I usually tell people, if you're a trans person traveling to the UK and you can avoid telling any UK official organisation at all in any way that you're trans, then absolutely avoid it. Obviously, keep your wits about you and don't walk down dark alleyways on your own. At night time, same stuff as you would do in any city. And if you go to more rural places and you stand out more, then you're more likely to have an issue. But that's the same with everywhere in the world. What is grim about the UK is the way that our politics is heading and the recent legal changes we've had with regards to trans rights. But globally speaking, it's quite a safe country still, in terms of like on the street safety. So I would certainly feel safer in the UK than in a lot of other countries. Most other countries, as a trans woman in a city or in a country. So that was that thing. So we've got one more. We've got some terrible news. The worst news in a while. We've got a rant. We've got a kind of legal win. And we've got a leak. What do we want next, guys? What's the energy in the room for? What should we save till last? What am I feeling like? I feel like maybe we should cover the bad thing next, just so it's out the way. No, let's do... Right, we're going to do the legal win thing, because it's like a legal win and a kind of rant in one. That's what we're going to do. I swear, every time I ask what you want, Critical Cupcake's like, rant. Leak. Oh, everyone wants to leak. Okay. We're doing that. So let me just get up the actual things. I thought I had it up, but we did not. I thought I had a better one for this than I did, but I do not. Sorry, 1 second, everyone. I'm just trying to read this thing to make sure it's the right thing. Oh, okay, yeah. Right. So you may remember that recently the head of the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, Baroness Faulkner, was questioned by the Women's and Equalities Committee. And they asked a bunch of questions and she deflected and gave non-answers, and they had to keep asking her the same question over and over again. And it was just very clear to absolutely everyone there that the whole thing was just theatre. She didn't give a fuck. They know they have unchecked power and the Women's Equalities Committee can't really do anything. They know that they know that the Baroness herself knows, and the EHRC know, that she's going and she's getting replaced with another gender critical person who's going to have unchecked power. It's all just a fucking sham at the moment. But she did say a few things and she tried to spin something, and I think what she said here probably could be interpreted as just lying. So there was a freedom of information claim here. She made the claim. So if we see this original, she made the claim, people thought positively about us. We're in the region of 35%, but they're now currently at 81%. So this is the claim here. So she was questioned, do people, the EHRC is obviously losing credibility and respect and trust. The EHRC, at least from LGBT people's point of view in the UK, is just like a fraudulent organization. It's corrupt. And so she was questioned on that, and she said, well, actually, 81% of people support what we're doing. And this person has asked, who's this, Heather Herbert, she has asked, the figure of 81% is surprising to me, so I would like to know which survey is she citing, and if the survey is internal to the HRC and has not been completed by a well-regarded third party, what criteria were used for the participants in the study, etc. And what percentage of LGBT people thought positively about the AHRC. So obviously she tried to answer this question with, oh no, the claim that, the LGBT people hate us is just made up because 81%, that's more than 4/5 of people, support the AHRC. And that's obviously nonsense, because the majority of the public have no idea what the EHRC is. And if you've heard of it, you're probably a trans person or a disabled person or another one of the minority groups they hate and are actively trying to take human rights away from. Or you're a gender critical person or someone who hates disabled people and you're probably in private meetings with them. And that's it. So I would say the vast majority of people who know about the EHRC at the moment probably think they're terrible. They did respond, and they said, at a meeting of the Women's Inequalities Committee, Baroness Faulkner said, we do surveys of opinion into our standing, and I will share one simple figure with you. I do not like words like approval or disapproval, but in the first year of my service, the so-called approval rating, people who thought positively about us, was in the region of 35, and it is currently 81. So straight up a claim. Note this down. She is saying people, her approval rating, people who thought positively about us, was in the region of 35, and it's currently 81. They wrote clarifying that. And then, where does it say this? We have written to the Women's Inequalities Committee to clarify the figures quoted by Baroness Falconer refer to our media sentiment analysis, which measures the tone and favourability of media coverage about the EHRC, not public opinion polling. In terms of methodology, our external media monitoring provider provides sentiment analysis of media coverage which mentions the EHRC. It uses artificial intelligence to deliver automated real-time insights around the tone of earned media coverage. So, the original claim was that since Baroness Falcon has taken over, people had increased their approval of her. Her approval rating went up. And it actually turns out that what happened is since she took over, the British press, which is like internationally known to be extremely transphobic from right to left, we have no pro-trans media organisations in the UK, no major ones. They're saying that their coverage of the EHRC was positive, which is totally different to an approval rating score. Like, absolutely not at all the same thing. And to answer the question, or to set it up here as if, well, we can't be unpopular because the media likes us, is just, it is deceptive. It comes across as lying to me personally, because I think she's well aware of what her position is and what she's doing and why she's there. She was put in place by the Conservative government in order to undermine trans rights. That is it. Like, they pretty much said that outright. And she knows that. That's all she's done since she's been in that position. There's been so much leaks about poor workplace conditions. So many people have quit. People were saying that people running out of meetings in tears and stuff. It sounds like the workplace culture there is terrible. Obviously, they've done absolutely nothing apart from throw disabled people under the bus a bit and directly attack trans people's rights. They know they have no good approval. They know most people fucking hate them. But they do approval ratings and stuff. They do check things like that. And she's specifically chosen to state this statistic in defense of the Women's Inequalities Committee asking about this. Because they also know, like, again, this is all theatre. The Women's Inequalities people, it's made up of, like, a group of people from different political parties. And, like, two of them are gender critical. And they know exactly what's going on here because they're in on this too. And the rest of them actually seem fairly positive on LGBT people. Ignorant at best. Ignorant at worst, sorry. But generally pretty good. And they all know, but they can't just say it because politics is fucking theatre. And so they're asking this. They're saying, oh, you know, what do you think about your approval rating? Or however they phrase the question. Because they know. They're saying, we know that LGBT people hate you and most other people don't know anything about you. And then her response isn't to just be like, oh, well, yes, she could have said, we're working on improving the tensions with the LGBT community, which is being unfairly stirred up by the trans activists or something. Like, that would have been the standard response. But instead, she specifically chose to go with, the approval rating of this organization has gone from 35 to 81%, when actually it was the media coverage from, like, the most transphobic media on the planet, basically. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I think that it looks to me like just lying and being deceptive. We can never know for sure. But I would be shocked if that was just a genuine mix-up and, like, or she didn't understand, or I don't think I just could not believe that she would think that actually most people like what they're doing. I think she well knows that her position is to cause harm. I think she's a true believer. I think she genuinely hates trans people. And she's just like, well, I don't really care if I tank this reputation of this organization. She probably doesn't believe in it as an organization anyway. Like the conservatives in general don't. She isn't a conservative, but the conservatives that put her in power don't like human rights. They don't care about this stuff. It's just like what they're doing in the USA. They put some wacko in charge and they hope that that person destroys it. Like that's the whole point. And yeah, they lie. Like this is what gender critical people do. They don't care if they're lying. They don't care if they're consistent on something. It's just about putting up enough of a smokescreen that they don't get that much scrutiny and then causing as much damage as they possibly can. So yeah, yet another thing where the EHRC is just a completely failed organization. Why is an approval rating relevant? Surely there are some measures against which she is failing. Yes, there are. All of them. I think it would be good to have, like, they probably should force approval ratings and community engagement surveys and all of that kind of stuff, because then it would give some kind of analysis on what people think of them and whether they're doing a good job. In fact, that might be a good thing for a pro-trans organization to organize what the sentiment of trans people is towards the HRC. We should probably get like a hard number on that. That'd be interesting. Right. We're going to move on to this next thing, which is going to be a rant, because that was also what I think people wanted. This. Okay. Then we'll do super chats and questions and stuff. So I saw this on Blue Sky, and it looks like it created some kind of discourse. So we have here from Julie Ray Goldstein saying, on a recent podcast, Gavin Newsom, so this is the governor of California in the US, who is potentially going to be the next contender to Donald Trump's third term or whatever. He's possibly going to be fielded as the main Democratic nomination for president. On a recent podcast, he tells Sean Ryan, I don't know who the fuck that is, how trans sports issue opened the door for him to change his mind on trans healthcare for kids. He now opposes. As someone who adored him since 2004 and voted for him 5 times, I can't wait for him to leave office. There's no way I'll be voting for him a 6th time. So, I thought we could just see what he says here.
All this was sort of, I think, post-George Floyd, post-COVID, we kind of came out, and there was obviously this rights movement post-George Floyd, which you got to understand, I mean, on the basis of what occurred and all the social unrest. And there was a natural inclination then to try to course correct, but it was across the spectrum of issues, including increasingly on the issues of how we talk, communicate, how politically correct and sensitive people started becoming, use of language, pronouns, and then issues around the trans community and this notion of gender affirming care for children. That's tough, man. And the science on that, I haven't dove that deep into it, but I read.
Yeah, I didn't think you had actually, mate, because anyone who has any opposition to trans healthcare for trans children is opposing the expert opinion, and they have no rational basis to do so.
One report, and then there's one that's slightly contradictory, and then they said, there's no contradictory. Here's what the UK just came out with. You're full of shit. It's absolutely scientifically sound that it's outrageous, and so it's intense. And then I meet with families, literally meet with families, save my child's life.
Right, okay, so on one hand, we have the UK coming out with a, internationally panned, terrible, non-peer-reviewed report, which disagrees with all of the expert opinion and advice. And on the other hand, we have him meeting actual trans children who are like, this saved my life. And so, oh, it's so difficult. Oh, what can we possibly say? It's such a difficult situation.
And they're thriving.
I mean, it's just, I mean, you can't serve the country until you're 18. You can't buy a gun. You can't buy a kid.
Okay, is serving the country or buying a gun healthcare? No, so this is a stupid argument. Fucking brain dead argument that a child should be able to see through.
Alcohol until you're 21. And I mean, to make that big of a decision is a.
It's not a decision, it's healthcare. It's like, oh, well, you can't drive a car until you're 18, so that means you can't actually have like your appendix out until you're 18 because it's a big decision.
Totally get it.
Kid, I mean, you could also be destroying a lot of lives as well.
Yeah, apart from actually, factually, you know for a fact you are not. There's no evidence for that at all. You've completely made that up. They've been doing healthcare for trans kids for over 30 years, and that just factually is not the case. There are people who transitioned as children who are older than me. We have the evidence for this already.
Well, I mean, their brain isn't
This guy's a fucking prick.
even fully developed.
You got, well, until 26 plus. Yeah, so that's even further with the brain.
Yeah, you just got to ban. Yeah, I mean, it's completely arbitrary number of 26. Yeah, it's just apparently when your brain just stops developing. Of course, it's not true at all. It's just a thing that transphobes say, but whatever. Just blindly repeat it without looking into this at all.
Look, I come to this very much more open-minded than I've ever been, more receptive, because a lot of
More receptive to anti-trans arguments?
the pushback came from folks, candidly, that I didn't respect, that never respected the gay community.
Yeah, exactly. The people who hate trans kids and want to take away their healthcare are also the people who hate gay people. Good observation. And now what, you're more open-minded to them because, what, you're stupid? You think this is politically more expedient for you?
Period. There are people who are opposed to just basic rights that have been going after. So I think the natural inclination was sort of dismiss.
Yeah, that's a good inclination. It makes sense. But also if you look into it further, it's rationally justified.
And now I recognize more fully and deeply. And I think the sports issue really opened that door for me.
I mean, it's good to see them say it out loud that they get radicalized hating on trans people in sports because they don't look into it and it's like a gut reaction. And then they start listening to all of these homophobic, misogynistic, racist people who say that people shouldn't have human rights. So, like, he's literally just saying this out loud. He's saying, I didn't want to interact with these people because they hated gay people and I knew that was bad. But then they were all talking about sports and I didn't look into it properly and my gut reaction says trans people shouldn't be allowed to do PE at school. So now I think maybe they have a point. Maybe you do have to hand it to the Nazis.
The nuances in this space. That said, I'll take a backseat to no one in terms of anti-discrimination laws against the community.
Yeah, well, good luck with managing banning trans healthcare and banning discrimination against trans people.
That's where I take a backseat to no one. And I've signed some of the most progressive legislation on that, and I'm proud of that. That's who I am. Stand up for ideals and strike out against injustice. And I think it's unjust to attack vulnerable communities and discriminate against people. That said, on the issue of children, this is a tough issue.
He's wrong. It's not a tough issue. They could just look at what the experts are saying. However, what he does say on discrimination there is good. And for him to just say his thought process out loud is good. And he comes across as a human way more than Keir Starmer ever does. Which is a comparison I'm going to make between the two shortly. But anyway, this was the clip. So Julie has said, based on this, she is not going to vote for him. Okay, I think fair enough. That is, she obviously thought, I think that when your expectations are as low for politicians as mine is, what he just said there comes across as barely even evil at all. Like, compared to what the Labour Party is doing in the UK, that would be incredible if we just had someone who was like ready to hear both sides on trans healthcare from both the people who hate trans people and like experts. Like we're a million miles away from that in the UK. But also, it does feel a little bit more like they're just a couple of years behind where we are, and this is the kind of rubbish that the Labour Party was saying a few years ago, and now look where we are. Doesn't mean it'll happen the same way. Anyway, this wasn't actually quite what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about was Parker Malloy here, who is great, and you should definitely follow on all the things. Said, I will never, ever vote for Gavin Newsom. Ever, under any circumstances. I don't care if he becomes a Dem nominee. He's still not getting my vote.
On the basis
So
of what
So I saw this
occurred
thing.
and all the social unrest.
Shut up. Blue Sky's so annoying with how it does the autoplay. Anyway. And I thought, when I see people say this, I think maybe 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, but this also bearing in mind the political landscape was different 10 years ago. I would have, because it was 2015, before Trump and before Brexit, I would have thought, well, you've got to vote for the lesser of two evils, right? But now when I see this, I think, well, fair enough. I think that's a fair position. But then Parker was pointing out that the replies were quite hostile to this take. This thinking is why we lose. Loads of them are blocked. I absolutely hate how Blue Sky blocks me from seeing what was said just because someone else has blocked this person. I just think it's the single worst feature about the website. It's fucking terrible. It just ruins, like, what use is this? Deranged reply, we can't even see it. Terrible. Not blaming Parker. This is entirely the fault of Blue Sky, and it's a terrible, terrible feature. Anyway, I did see loads of negative replies here, which we can probably no longer look at. Basically saying people like you are the reason that the Democrats keep losing. And I think that argument is absolutely terrible. I can totally understand someone saying, like, here is a moral dilemma. Do you want to vote for the second worst person on earth or the worst person on earth? It's quite an easy, like, in this isolated hypothetical situation for, like, philosophy undergrads or whatever, that's quite an easy philosophical discussion. Like, yeah, if that was the only choice and the only situation and the only thing on the table, then voting for the lesser of two evils makes sense. Absolutely. But I don't think this "you're the reason why we lose" thing is them saying that. I think if someone replied saying, I think we should vote for the lesser of two evils, and that's why I will be voting for the lesser of two evils, that's also like a fair position. If someone comes to me with that argument, if someone tells me they voted for Keir Starmer in the last election and they will be voting for him in the next one, not because they support any of his policies, but because they're voting for the lesser of two evils, I might say, well, I disagree with your reasoning and here's why, which I'm about to go into. But I don't think this person is my enemy. You are the reason why we're losing, whatever. In the same way that I think so many people come at the take of, I'm not going to vote for this person, do seem to think that. And I think this is just completely the wrong way to look at this situation. So I wrote about this. Sorry, we're just going to read out one of my Blue Sky posts and go into it further. I've said, the people who are annoyed at LGBT people saying they'd never vote for Gavin Newsom or Keir Starmer are so ridiculous. They accuse us of being the reason why the centre-left is losing, whilst actively opposing those trying to hold their guy to account, encouraging them to pursue worse policies. Vote for my guy, even if he's evil, is the reason why you are losing. Decades of that has allowed your guy to be so cartoonishly evil that literally... This is, I think, more true for Keir Starmer, by the way, but maybe you also think that's true for Gavin Newsom. Didn't quite come across in the last interview, in my opinion, as him being as bad as Keir Starmer, who is actually terrible. Anyway, that literally the only positive attribute is that they aren't as bad as the other guy. I think maybe this is more true for, like, Kamala Harris, whose main feature seemed to be that she wasn't Donald Trump. Anyway, If you had been pushing back the whole time, maybe that wouldn't be the case. When you give them blind allegiance and a guaranteed vote, what pressures exist on them to change their policies other than money from billionaires? It's very clear that the Democrats and Labour's base hates the direction they're travelling in. But they continue to get worse because they'll think you'll still vote for them and there's big money pulling them. You might think that it's a simple harm reduction calculation, but it isn't. Voting for them again will encourage them to get even worse. And then even more people will be harmed by them, and people will just stop voting altogether. Of course, I know that if the Republicans or Reform get in the next election, it will be even worse for everyone, particularly for people like me, actually. And it usually happens that those being annoyed by people not being able to vote for their guy are the least affected. But fundamentally, their political strategy is wrong. Voting tactically for short-term harm reduction, important to point out harm reduction here, not like voting for an actual positive policy, whilst guaranteeing long-term suffering is not a good strategy, as we can see playing out right now. Even more ridiculous is relying on people, like as a strategy, relying on people you're actively harming on voting for you on the grounds that someone else might harm them or other people more. That is so stupid. You have to give people something to vote for. Right, okay. So what I'm saying is, like, take a step back for a minute and stop looking at this in the individual level and look at this at the population level. Your guy is losing. You think, this is terrible. We're getting the worst. We're going to get Nigel Farage. We're going to get a third Trump term. Why does our guy keep losing? Who is to blame? If you then look and there are loads of people, a whole population of people, this is what you've got to look at it, at population levels. There is a group of people who traditionally have been centre-left voters who are no longer voting at all. And when asked, they say the party has moved too far right for me to vote. If your response is to be angry at them, effectively saying, my political strategy relies on these people whose policies, who do not agree with the policies I'm putting forward on voting for me, then your political strategy is stupid. Why are you relying on people who you're not catering for on voting for you? You're saying, the political system is so bad that they are trapped into voting for me. And if they don't, I'm angry about it. Like, that's a garbage position. It's stupid. Like, realistically, you can go up to someone and be like, why didn't you vote for the lesser of two evils? But they might not even see it that way. They might, like, I think there are a lot of trans people and disabled people who might look at the current situation in the UK and be like, well, this current government is actually worse than the last one. How much worse can reform be? Maybe even reform will be better. I actually think reform will be worse than this current Labour government, if you can believe it. I actually definitely think that another Trump term will be worse than whatever the Democrats can cook up. But some people might not think that. And I think there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily trans people or disabled people or other minority groups who are directly affected by terrible human rights choices, who might actually think like the Conservatives were terrible, Labour are even worse, so maybe I'll give Reform a chance. Like, there'll be people who aren't plugged in, they aren't as politically aware, they don't really know what's going on, and that's a lot of the voters. So how can you, like, it's okay to be annoyed that some people don't know what's going on, people voting for stupid things, and a general frustration I share with you. But if your anger is being taken out on people who are saying, look, this political party has moved so far right that I feel like I'm voting, it's like, you know, turkeys voting for the chop at Christmas or whatever the saying is. Like, this is what I feel like with Labour. I don't think I could vote Labour, even tactically, just on a moral ground for how terrible they are for LGBT rights. Like, how could I, if today's Labour Party was rebranded and put as an option in like 2010 or whatever it was when David Cameron got voted in, like, they are extremely way worse for LGBT rights, and I would genuinely vote David Cameron over Keir Starmer on LGBT rights because he just objectively was better, even though he was a fucking terrible and was very like a right-wing knobhead who ended us in Brexit. And I didn't vote for them, and I never would, and I've never voted Tory, and I never would. But I think you can't expect people to like listen to the you should vote for the lesser of two evils when, particularly when you aren't being affected by something that they are, and it just is so terrible what they're facing. And like this is also true for people who are focusing on things like the genocide in Gaza. Like, it was pretty clear that Kamala Harris was gonna carry on with that, do nothing about it. And like, at what point does the lesser of two evils argument just break down? Like, when you're supporting a genocide, like, oh, we're doing a bit less genocide. You just can't. I don't know. But importantly, what the point I'm making here is, I think it's a rubbish political strategy and it's a waste of your anger. Why isn't your anger placed at the people making the decisions, the people with the power, who are saying, well, our strategy relies on people who we hate voting for us. Our strategy relies on like publicly and loudly causing harm to minority groups that we feel are so trapped in the current political situation they have no other options. Like, you don't think you should be using your anger on them? They're the reason that's losing. Like, the reason we end up in this situation is when you have a lesser of two evils situations, and all these people like on the wait, which way is left for you? All the people on all the people further left have no like realistic option. Like in the US, you literally have no other option. In the UK, we have no like other winnable option, or didn't in previous elections, though we might do in the future with the Green Party. If we keep having that situation, the people making the decisions will just think, oh, well, we're always going to win that vote, so we don't need to chase that vote, so we don't need to do any policies that benefit these people at all. In fact, we can do things that harm them because they're still going to vote for us, and that will just keep happening, and they'll just keep shuffling and shuffling because they're going to want to eat the centre voters who don't always want to vote for them. So constantly voting for the lesser of the two evils actually causes these parties to get worse. But now, the other point, which I want to highlight here, which I didn't point out, is if you tell someone you're going to vote for them regardless of what they do, you have absolutely no bargaining power at all. You're not taking part in the democratic process. Like, you are voting, which is taking part in it. But that's not the only like duty of someone who lives in a democracy, is to just vote once every 4 years and then that's it. You need to get the politicians to work for you. Like, that's literally the whole purpose of democracy, is we're voting in people who are meant to work for us. That isn't the reality of it, but like that's the goal, that's the intention. And if you just tell them, oh yeah, well, whatever you do, I'll just vote for you, then what? You cannot be mad when they do something you don't like. Whereas if you tell them, look, I hate the other guy so much that I really want to vote for you anyway, but actually I'm not going to if you harm trans people, if you support genocides, if you like sign disabled people's death warrants or whatever, like if you harm these people, I am just not going to vote for you. Then they will look at their polling numbers and they'll be like, shit, we actually were relying on this huge, we were relying on the LGBT vote, which is a huge block of people, by the way. We were relying on the like disabled people's vote. We were relying on like human rights activists' votes because we've always had them for the last 50 years worth of elections, and shit, we've lost all of them. They will panic and they will be like, we have to win these people back. And then they will try and first just do some virtue signaling bullshit where they're just like, oh, we support equality or something. And when that doesn't work because you say, no, I'm not going to vote for you unless you roll back these attacks on human rights and stop like building weapons or whatever and arresting people on the street for protesting, then they might do something. So if you're going around telling people, like if you're going around telling people, oh, if you say you're not going to vote for this person, then you're the reason we're losing. What are you talking about? those people are trying to actively use their bargaining power and like exercise their power in a democracy to affect change, and you are not. You are saying, I don't care what happens politically as long as it's not the other guy. You're just doing a team sports rubbish thing. And yeah, maybe you could say, oh, it's harm reduction, but like the current Labour government is worse than the previous Conservative government for a lot of people. So was it even harm reduction to vote for them? It doesn't seem to have turned out that way. And that's because they're chasing the right-wing voters and they're not chasing the left-wing voters because they think they can always get the left-wing vote. So I just really think it's like it's not just, you know, if you tell me you're doing, as I said earlier, if you tell me you're doing a harm reduction vote and that's why you're voting for Labour or that's why you're voting for the Democrats or something, I don't think you're my enemy, but I think you're wrong. And I don't just think you're wrong in a like, oh, well, that's not correct, but do what you want. I think that you are encouraging the state of affairs that we have, and that I don't think that's good. And if you're complaining about people who are trying to change it, like, you're part of the problem. Just fuck off, basically. So I the next election you have, I think you should vote. I don't quite know how it works in the US. In the UK, we often have multiple parties, and some of them are seen as like protest votes because they'll never win anyway. I think even that is better than not voting. And also in the UK, if all of the parties are terrible, you can spoil your ballot, which is where you just like scribble on it or write fuck off or something. And it doesn't count as a vote, but it still is tallied up. And it still says, it like still expresses discontent. And like, obviously, if you had an election and there was like half of the people who went to vote spoilt their ballots, then that would say something pretty strongly to all of the people who are making the strategies for the political parties. So I think you should turn up and do something. I don't know what the equivalents are in the US. I know that you had like a third party candidate this time who was just like rubbish and maybe just a gateway to the right wing, but it's just something. But you have to affect change somehow. And if you know, you can write letters to your MPs, you can you join a union, you can go to protests, as long as you don't hold the wrong sign and get arrested for it in the UK. But one of the things you can do to change things in democracy is to threaten to withhold your vote from the party who might listen to you if you do that. I think I'm banned in the line live stream chats. Oh, you're not banned here yet. Oh, chat's, what's going on in chat? Some stuff's going on. Several years ago, a person changed their name by default to none of the above and got quite a few votes. That's such a fucking British thing. I don't know if that's true or not, but I could so see that being true. The US election system is too convoluted. Yeah. I think if you want good analysis of trans rights, come here. And I think if you want to hear a good take on political strategy in general in this situation, come here. If you want to know exactly how to do that in action in a country that's not the UK, go somewhere else afterwards and find out, because I just can't, like, I'm talking about the UK mainly and then also the US and Canada a bit, and then it's like, I couldn't tell you how Germany works either, but you should do the same thing in Germany. I couldn't tell you how New Zealand works, but you should do the same thing in New Zealand, and you're just going to have to find someone who knows a bit more about the New Zealand election process. Oh, now we've got something negative to do. Let's do super chats. That'll deflect it for a little bit. I saw chat was going off quite a lot in that last segment, but sorry, I couldn't read it because I was in the zone, and when I tried to read it, my brain turns off. Or my mouth turns off, actually. My brain carries on. Oh, here's the goblin. Let's do super chats, Pulse. So oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, sorry, I didn't mute it. Sorry, everyone. So I definitely remember this one. I don't remember this one. Okay, so we had, it might have been last week or it might be this week, but I'm going to read them out anyway. From Moy Philosopher, sent 50 Danish kroner. Thank you very much. That's super kind. Who says, I was born with a male and female gonad. We're not a third sex, we are both. Sex is a spectrum. Exactly. I was actually just looking for papers about people who were born with both gonads before the stream. I was just trying to find some good examples of it. Yes, I think you're valid to describe yourself as both if that's how you see yourself. But importantly, people who are born with a male gonad and a female gonad absolutely exist. And anyone who tries to tell you that sex is defined on gonads and it is binary is very trivially wrong, because there are people with both gonads, people with just one, people with just the other, and people with neither. So, and also people with gonads which themselves aren't one or the other, because you can get over testes. So, Acides3 says, for £5, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Katie. I didn't know you were trying to do a stream on your insect enthusiasm, and we confused you into trans activism. Tell us about bugs. I've got a super fucking grim bug fact. If it, I think I've probably got to tell you it now. But there's something called I think it's a twist wing fly. And I thought bed bugs had the most horrific sex in the animal kingdom, but this thing is way worse. So there's a fly which is a parasite of bees and wasps, and it like lives in their like abdomen shell, like under the little folds. It lives there as a maggot, which is already horrific. The males mature and turn into an adult, but the females don't. They just stay a maggot. And the males then turn into a fly and fly off. And find another bee that's already infected. And they find the female, which is still a larva, and they have sex with that, which is already disgusting. The animal world is fucking horrific. But worse still is, because they don't sexually mature or mature in any way, these female larvae don't have any kind of entry point. So they literally just like slam through their body, a bit like what bed bugs do. If you didn't know that, bed bugs also do that, which is horrific. And then so bed bugs already do that bit. Bed bugs both sexually mature, but they do like I don't know how to say this without it being just horrific. They do some like there's no entry point, so they have to smash through basically, which is utterly fucking horrific, and it often kills them. But in these twistwing flies, it's even worse still, because then they actually don't. Bedbugs have a way of laying eggs. They have like an ovipositor. These twistwing flies don't. So they literally just they create the eggs in their ovaries, and then they just hatch out there, and they eat their way out. So that's their process, and it's just the most horrific thing I've ever heard. And fucking hell, sometimes people are like, oh, being a human's horrible. What animal would you rather be? Yeah, maybe being a cat or a dog would be better. But I think as far as some animals go, like, at least you're not one of these fuckers. Just be thankful you're a human, because it could be a lot worse. Katie, I still need to sleep in a bit. Well, sorry to anyone who's absolutely disgusted with that and has dropped off the stream because it's the worst thing I've ever heard. Yes, it is. You should blame AceDs3 who sent the super chat. And on to the next thing. Saying, hey, James, £10. Thank you very much. That's very kind. I love evolutionary biology in part because of Dawkins' books, and now he's speaking in ways which are counter to the things he taught me. Please, P.S. Love your streams. Thanks for being so awesome. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, he does seem to have gone to war with his own position in the past. Legally Maud says my legal name and gender change were granted on Monday. Now I get to do so much more paperwork. I feel like I maybe read that before, but maybe I didn't. Maybe you just told me that in DM. But that is amazing. Congratulations, Maud. $4.99 from Paul Doherty. Thanks, Paul. I know Paul in real life. Shout out, Paul. I hope I see you again soon. He says no message, just respect. Sean has sent £2 and has sent some maths. Thanks very much, Sean. A square matrix A is not invertible if and only if... Oh, I don't know what det A means. Equals 0. I don't know det A. I guess that's some generic function. You'll have to tell me in DM. Critical Cupcake says, mayonnaise is the worst condiment. Thank you very much, Critical Cupcake. You are correct. Jason sent $20 Australian. Thank you very much. That's very kind. It says, enjoy your break, Katie. Thank you. I will. I'm very much looking forward to it. Though I haven't actually arranged transport yet, so it's still a bit stressful. Cashin sends $2 US and says, have a great holiday. Thank you very much. Sean Ishwood says, Helen Joyce does not represent all mathematicians. Sorry, Sean said that. £2. Yep, she does not. Though she definitely isn't alone, I'm sure. But, yeah, I doubt she's representative. And then Sean sends a third super chat. Thank you very much, Sean. £5. Current voting has some flaws. If half of people prefer A to B and the other B to A, then who wins? Mathematicians use voting theory to study this. Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you get exactly the same amount of votes, then that is pretty terrible. But I know with our first past the post system, you can get situations where most people want to vote, but most people like left-wing policies, and then there are 3 left-wing parties, and each of them gets 20% each of the vote, and then the one right-wing party gets 40% of the vote, and then they win, even though most people voted left-wing. I know that happens quite a lot. So that's, yeah, I'm sure voting theory covers all that kind of stuff. Right, okay. We have some bad news, and we've just got to cover it. So the Labour government has released its new guidance and guidelines for schools and teachers with relation to LGBT issues. And it's long. There's loads of stuff. I'll put the link in the description. It's called the RSHE Statutory Guidance. But some people have highlighted some of the bits, and I think it's just the easiest way to look at it. So as Philippa points out here, Philippa's great. You should definitely follow her. She's a letter writing machine. She's still a bit shit, but it's better than the Conservative one. And I've seen a range of opinions on this. I've seen some people saying that Labour has brought back Section 28. And I've seen other people saying, yeah, well, it's bad, but it's not as bad. I think maybe both of those things are true. The previous Conservative draft guidelines were absolutely fucking terrible, and they explicitly banned teaching about trans people. It just straight up was Section 28. So the new Labour one, which is actually going to go into effect, doesn't explicitly ban mentioning about trans people. So that is, unfortunately, we can class that as a positive because it's got lots of negatives. They say, I mean, it's good that they say that they should teach about gay people as well, obviously. But they've mainly attacked trans people here. They say they should learn about all protected characteristics, including sexual orientation and gender reassignment, by the end of their secondary education. So they're kind of focusing here more on the Equality Act rather than just on people, which is kind of rubbish, really. But it does say understanding the importance of equality and respect, and they should learn about both gay people and trans people. So that is better than previous. But the reason they phrased it in this way is to set up for the rest of the bullshit in here, and it's pretty bad. They say pupils should be taught the facts and the law about biological sex and gender reassignment. This should recognize that people have legal rights by virtue of their biological sex, which are different from the rights of those of the opposite sex with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment. So that's a bit of a mouthful of a sentence, and that on purpose. But what they're saying here is, based on your birth sex, you have different rights in the UK. Like, straight up, that's what they're saying. Based on your birth sex, you have different human rights, and people should be taught that. But specifically, they're highlighting that trans people have less rights than cis people, and you have to be taught that. They are using a biological sex here in the Supreme Court way, where they haven't given a definition of it, and they don't intend to. They are just hoping that you assume it means birth sex. They then say pupils should also be taught to recognize that people with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, as with other protected characteristics, have protection from discrimination and should be treated with respect and dignity, which obviously is impossible if you then previously have said that trans people have less rights than cis people, and that based on your birth sex you have different human rights, which is actually terrible and should be scary for all women. Like, that is a very slippery slope. Like, sex-based rights, which is the gender critical buzz phrase, is terrible. We shouldn't have rights based on which sex you are. Like, previously we had the right to vote, which was based purely on whether you're a man or not, and that was terrible. That was a sex-based right. And now they've managed to slip this back in, and now guidance for schools is saying you should teach people they have different rights based on what sex they were at birth, and that trans people have less human rights. So that's depressing. Overall, yeah, as I guess Phillips said here, it's still a bit shit, but better than the Tory one. I think still very bad, but better than the Tory one. But this is kind of where it gets even worse. In teaching this, schools should be mindful that beyond the facts and law about biological sex and gender reassignment, there is significant debate. And they should be careful not to endorse any particular view or teach it as fact. Well, why shouldn't they just teach the actual facts? For example, they should not teach as a fact that all people have a gender identity. What? Why don't you just teach the facts full stop, regardless of how controversial it is? It's like saying, oh, well, it's actually controversial about whether the moon landings happened, so we're not going to teach it as a fact. Apart from it just is a fact. Like, that's what the science is saying. You should be teaching science. You shouldn't be teaching political opinions. Schools should avoid language and activities which repeat or enforce gender stereotypes. Good. Schools should be mindful to avoid any suggestion that social transition is a simple solution to feelings of distress or discomfort. What? What are you talking about? Who is saying that social transition is a simple solution to anything? It's not simple. Transition is not simple, but it can be part of a treatment for people with dysphoria. Which is, again, a fact. Like, okay, you could absolutely say not all people have a gender identity, because there quite possibly are people who don't. But over 99% of people have a gender identity, for sure. Particularly The people with the strongest gender identities are those who feel compelled to medically transition, and those who go around insisting that they don't have a gender identity, whilst being incredibly distressed at the idea of trans people and disgusted at the idea of transition. Like, they care a lot. Of course they care a lot about whether they're a man or a woman. It's like a core part of their identity, and that's why they're so angry about it, that other people are changing whether they're a man or a woman or not. Like, they are some of the examples of the people with the strongest sense of gender identity. And also, if you just ask, if you went around to 100 schools in the UK and you asked every single kid who was under the age of 6, are you a boy or a girl or something else? 99.9% of them would tell you instantly, and they would be very upset if you told them they were the other thing. And that includes most cis people and most trans people. And this isn't just like some wild speculation. This is like the scientifically accepted position. Schools should encourage young people to consider how to express their views whilst remaining respectful of the opinions of others. Schools should be clear that bullying or disrespectful language is never appropriate. They're just trying to like have their cake and eat it, where they're like, oh, you can't disagree with gender critical people, but also you can't be bullying trans people. If you ban bullying trans people, gender critical can't exist, because that's literally what they exist to do. Where schools decide to use external resources, they should avoid materials that use cartoons or diagrams that oversimplify this topic, that could be interpreted as being aimed at younger children, or that perpetuate stereotypes or encourage pupils to question their gender. So how exactly are you going to... Previously, they said... or was it just in this last part? Yeah, schools should avoid language and activities which repeat or enforce gender stereotypes. That is good. Then they say you should avoid things that could be interpreted as being aimed at younger children or encouraging pupils to question their gender. Well, if you say gender stereotypes are bad, it's all a load of bullshit, you should do what you want, you can be who you want, don't let other people control like your appearance based on what they think people who are born boys or girls should do. That is the only way you can really oppose gender stereotypes. And yet that absolutely could be interpreted as encouraging people to question their gender. Like, what are you talking about? How could you ever do this? There's absolutely no way. This is so broad. Anything that could be interpreted as, not things that are, but something that can be interpreted as. If you go into a school and you say, there's no reason why certain people should wear a dress and certain not, they could be like, you're encouraging people to question their gender, because what if my son wants to wear a dress and then he thinks he's a girl? Like, so what, you can't do that? You can't do this earlier thing where you said schools should avoid language and activities that repeat or enforce gender stereotypes? How are they going to possibly navigate this? But also, again, it's this stupid, fucking ridiculous conspiracy theory bullshit of encouraging pupils to question their gender. Like, it's implied as if people are going around pressuring people to transition, which is fucking ridiculous. Because that absolutely isn't true. And it's not just not true. The absolute inverse of it is true to an extreme degree, where the government is actively trying to pressure people to not transition. Like, it couldn't be further from the truth. But then also, what harm is there in saying some people are trans people? Have you considered it yourself? Like, what's the issue here? The issue is that your fucking right-wing people who you are chasing think that people can be talked into being LGBT. You should say to everyone, you should explore your sexuality and your gender identity, because that doesn't harm anyone and it benefits everyone, not just LGBT people. It benefits cis and straight people too, to explore their sexuality, to consider their sexuality and to consider their gender identity. So this is just completely bullshit. And this line in particular feels like, you know, the reintroduction of Section 28, where it's an overly broad thing which could easily just ban all materials and teaching of anything because it could be interpreted. Schools should consult parents on the content of external resources on this topic in advance and make all materials available to them on request as set out in the section in openness with parents. Which, it's just allowing hateful anti-LGBT bigots to raise a big fuss, threaten to sue, say they have J.K. Rowling on their side, and then the school will back down. Yeah, this is not good. It absolutely could be worse, but it is depressing. And I think that teachers should do their absolute best to navigate around this and teach about trans people and teach that gender critical is immoral and hateful without getting themselves in trouble, because it's just the only thing you can do in response to this. So it's also worth pointing out that they did do a consultation on this, and they have had to report on it. And this is why I think it's important to take part in these consultations, because even though they've gone ahead with these changes, they have to write down and publish the vast majority of people opposed them. Almost 2/3 of the respondents disagreed with the changes to this section. Some reported that they thought the section was harmful and that not teaching LGBT content will cause unwanted, damaging feelings by suggesting that being LGBT is something to be kept hidden. Respondents' opinions remain divided, with some respondents commenting that it is ridiculous that LGBT education is still not fully compulsory, and others stating that it should not be taught at all. Right, so obviously we got the full range. We got normal people all the way to rancid bigots who think LGBT people should be eradicated, but the vast majority of them said that this section was bullshit and they shouldn't do it. Just over 3/5, 62%. Interesting that they describe almost 2/3 and almost just over 3/5 when they're only like 2% different. I mean, that's true because this is closer to 66 and this is closer to 60. They're basically the same. Of respondents did not agree with the changes to the content on gender reassignment. Comments included that you cannot teach about gender reassignment without teaching about gender identity, which teaching about gender identity does not lead to children questioning their gender, but rather promotes respect and tolerance, and that not teaching about it is harmful to the students experiencing gender dysphoria. Some respondents expressed concerns about how to teach gender identity whilst complying with the duties of the Education Act to be politically impartial. So the consultation here was overwhelmingly negative, and the government has just said, fuck you, we don't care. And that might seem very frustrating, and it is. It's completely bullshit. This government is an absolute disgrace. Fuck Labour, particularly Bridget Phillipson, who is terrible. Obviously hates LGBT people. But it's here on record. We know we've had a consultation now. It's been done. And we know what the public wants. We know what teachers want because they're the ones who will respond to this the most. And we know, that's positive to read. We now know that, 2/3 of people who felt compelled to fill this in, that's going to include all the gender criticals, all the homophobes, all the people who think LGBT people should be eradicated, all the people who think women should be in the kitchen. All of those would have responded because they are fanatics with nothing better to do and no hobbies. And then a bunch of teachers and unions and people who are concerned about their LGBT children and stuff, all those filled in, and they massively outnumbered, over 2-1. No, less than 2-1, but close to 2-1. Just over 3/5, almost 2/3. Opposed this, and that's really good to see. It's good to know that we are still the majority and that the government is still going against the will of the people, and there's still a lot of energy and political strength to overturn this bullshit. And I really think we need to keep leaning in on that. And you've just got to be ready for every consultation to go like this. The government will do a consultation, the results will come back in our favour, and they will ignore it. But we just have to keep putting this pressure on. They just can't keep this up forever. The government did respond. The majority of the consultation responses disagreed with the proposed changes to the section in the consultation draft, and we've taken this into account. Some people feel strongly that parents should be able to prevent their children from being taught about LGBT people in order to foster respectful relationships. That's completely bullshit, and they should fuck off. It's important that all pupils understand the values of respect, tolerance, and kindness. From the current Labour government, right? The guidance continues to be clear that all pupils should learn about the Equality Act. Blah, blah, blah. The revised content encourages primary schools to include same-sex parents when teaching about families. That's good. We recognise the guidance beyond the facts in the law about gender reassignment says public debate. Like, so what? I mean, if there was public debate about whether the sun was round or whether we orbited around it, who cares? Like, it's your duty as teachers and your duty as the government to create a syllabus which teaches people what is true, regardless of public debate. I mean, there's public debate about vaccines now, more than ever. Are you going to teach the debate? No, you're not. Well, you better fucking not. You should be teaching what is actually factually true about vaccines, which is that they save people's lives. The guidance continues to advise schools should they teach the facts and law about this area, but should be careful not to endorse any particular view or teach it as fact, which is just completely ridiculous. Like, how could you ever teach the like? Okay, you're going to teach the law here. You're going to say, well, actually, yes, legally, trans people have less rights than cis people, and based on your birth sex, you have different rights. And then they're going to say, according to the law, it says biological sex, and a kid's going to put their hand up and be like, "What is biological sex?" How are you going to answer that question without now breaching the law? Like, you're going to have to say, well, putting my science hat on and nothing to do with relationships and sexual education, sex isn't binary and it's not immutable and it's really complicated and there's loads of things involved. Now, taking that hat off and putting on my legal hat and my sex education hat, I'm going to have to tell you that biological sex, which is completely different to the concept I just mentioned, is binary and is the same as your birth sex, and it's actually unrelated to your biological sex characteristics. Here, and they even give a fucking shout out to 4 Women Scotland. They refer to a person's biological sex, but they don't say what biological sex is. It's just such a joke. It's just so bullshit. This stupid government. People just... They just do not give a fuck about the science at all. They're just stamping all over it, and it's very frustrating. And we also got a letter from Bridget Phillipson, who talks about this particular section, saying this section on LGBT content has been updated to be clear that primary schools are encouraged to include same-sex parents when talking about different types of families. That is good. It's also clear up front about the differences in rights based on sex and gender reassignment to reflect the ruling. It acknowledges that beyond the facts and the law about biological sex, there is significant debate. Schools should be careful not to endorse any particular view or teach it as fact. Fuck off. Just teach the actual facts. The guidance is clear about the need to avoid language and activities which repeat or enforce gender stereotypes, which is in line with the conclusions of the Cass review. It's just so garbage. What they're just shoehorning in all this anti-trans stuff and trying to make it out as if the Cass review is anything to do with gender stereotypes, when 4 Women Scotland, who are very involved with the gender critical movement and sex matters and stuff, are gender critical, and they are Sex Matters was pushing for sex-based uniforms recently in schools as part of their push for this guidance update. The gender criticals are the ones who are enforcing gender stereotypes. If a kid comes in and says, I want to change my name and pronouns and clothes or whatever, and you say no because what? Because of your birth sex, you have to act and look and be referred to in a certain way based on the genitals you had as a child. That is enforcing gender stereotypes. That's literally all that is. That is the sole action going on in that situation. Yet you're trying to act as if the complete opposite is true, whilst also saying you're not allowed to teach the facts. Just unbelievable. So, as I did mention, Philippa is a letter writing machine and does encourage you to write a letter. I will link to this thread in the description as well. and you should write a letter if you have the energy to do so, to the Women's Inequalities Committee. Again, we've just got to keep applying pressure and pointing out that the public doesn't agree with them, that this is what they're doing is factually untrue and it's all bullshit. Because, I mean, what else can we do? But also, political pressure does work. So yeah, is Section 28 back in the UK? Not quite, not really. I know that I have seen some people saying it's back or even that it's worse. I think we're just going to have to see the practical results of it, and maybe people will be like, oh, Katie, you were wrong, it's worse than ever, and possibly, yeah. I think there will be a lot of people using this as an excuse to not teach about trans people. Is this guidance terrible? Yeah, it's rubbish. Is it better than the Conservatives? Yeah, probably. Marginally. But, yeah, overall it's pretty bad. And it's quite depressing. So I guess it's your duty if you have any young people in your life to teach them about this stuff, because they're not going to learn it at school, and teach them like what's actually factually true, rather than trying to teach them the debate of vaccines or whether the world is round or whatever. Yeah, you just might have to supplement the education they get in the UK. The guidance straight up is implying that trans people are a result of gender stereotypes, so that's one huge issue with it. Yeah, I think that is a fair inference from what they're saying there, because like that is kind of how it reads, and it's just completely ridiculous, as like the complete opposite of reality. And it just shows how deeply entrenched the gender critical movement is into the current government, because they're just using gender critical phrases, arguments, ideological talking points, saying don't teach I just can't believe they say don't teach the facts. It's just ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Definitely worse than the old Section 28. I'm just not convinced that that's true, but maybe it is. But I'm pretty, like, before they said you just can't teach about homosexuality, or you can't promote it, which involved not teaching about LGBT people at all, not about any sexuality or gender identity stuff at all. And here they do actually at least mention trans people and say that they should teach about gay relationships. So that just feels better to me than Section 28. But it's definitely bad. Don't teach the facts as facts. Yeah. It is pretty crazy. It's just insane, really, isn't it? Right, okay. We've got one more thing. Let's do one more thing. Oh, before we do one more thing, have you signed this petition yet? It's going to close at the end of this month. Legally enshrine the right of trans adults to physically transition using NHS services. 81,000 signatures. We want to get this to 100,000. Please share it with people. Please sign it. If you're unsure, you're like, oh, I don't know if I should sign these petitions, I've got a video coming out on that in a couple of days. Or you can watch the live stream from last week where I'll discuss it. But go check it out. I'll put this link into the chat right now. And let's get it on Twitch as well, because I often neglect Twitch chat. I'm sorry, Twitch. I love you just as much. Well, I don't really, but I nearly do. Okay. So, oh yeah, and I did say I would ask if anyone had any questions. Chat, now's your chance. Before we do our last thing, do you have any questions that you want me to answer? If you have a good one, maybe I'll do it, because it's good to have a jumping off point that can actually help people. It's just because I miss being on the transatlantic call-in show. Bad times. It would be nice. Let's see if we have any more super chats. We do. We have Kirsty McTeer, 199. Just we help from one engineer to another. Thank you very much. That is very kind. I am unfortunately an engineer. No, you can't lie and say you're British and sign the petition because you need to enter your postcode. But you don't have to be British. You just have to live here. Where did I get this dress? Where did I get this dress? Oh, I got it from Long Tall Sally, I think. Which is good if you are a taller woman, like myself. Then it's sells good clothes, taller women, basically. No, they don't ask you for your address. I don't think you should break the rules of signing these government petitions because we know the gender criticals do. And they're not just going to take these figures blindly. They're going to analyze this. They're going to see what IP address is and detect for suspicious bot activity. And like if you Google British postcode, the first one comes up. There's going to be like more signatures from there than anywhere else. Like that, they'll notice, or they'll at least have some statistical anomalies on things that are like all the gender critical positions are going to be signed by bots and stuff. So I just don't think we should do that. I know it's depressing because it means it inflates their numbers and not ours, and the system's rigged against us. But I just think I just am a strong adherent to all you can do is the right thing and just hope. And so, yeah. How long have I been playing in a band? The first band I was in was when I was 16. We were a Velvet Revolver and Guns N' Roses cover band, and I played bass guitar. And then I was in various bands from when I was a teenager and when I was at university. And then I was in a band from 22 and poured so much of my energy into it, as did all the other people in the band. And we were writing this ridiculously technical, I guess, metalcore, but almost no 4/4 time signatures, almost no parts where the guitars and the bass were all playing the same things. It was crazy difficult, and we spent so long getting it good enough to tour. And then everyone fell out with each other. I didn't fall out with anyone, but everyone else fell out with each other, and the whole thing fell apart. And we only played a few live shows, and it was just so demoralizing. I was like, I don't really want to be in a band anymore. And then Dehumanoid kind of spawned from that, and where we couldn't be bothered to be in a proper band anymore, and we just wanted to be chill. I don't know if Dehumanoid will do any more or not. Perhaps not. But it was. I mean, I would. But we'll just see. We'll just see. The whole point of it was to be no pressure. And I'd love to do more music in the future. Unfortunately, it's just like my fourth priority now after like existing job, family, Pokemon, YouTube, and then guitar. And it's just, it hardly ever happens. Do I have any voice training recommendations? Yeah. Don't listen to me because my voice is terrible. No, I guess one of my points is that to me my voice sounds fucking horrible, and if you think it sounds good, then maybe I'm correct and you're all delusional, or maybe it sounds okay and I'm delusional. Either one could be true, but I think everyone hates their own voice. So I think it's a good question on voice training stuff. What did I do? So my voice was naturally quite deep, which is very distressing. And it was literally like an octave lower than this. I don't know, it's like horrible. So I did have to, some people don't have to like voice train or change their voices, or if you transition early, then you don't, your vocal cords don't elongate and your voice doesn't get lower. But for a lot of trans women, voice training might be something you want to do, you shouldn't feel pressured to do it. But if either you want to, or you feel like you sometimes or always need to pass, then you will need to do some kind of voice training. There are things on YouTube, you can look it up. If you just type in voice training for trans women, there are examples. There are people trying to sell you things online. Some of them might be good. I don't have any in particular to recommend, but I did just watch a load of free YouTube videos. There is some apps as well where you can like look at the pitch of your voice. I think you can also get voice therapy on the NHS. I had like 4 or 6 sessions of voice therapy on the NHS, and it was fine. It was moderately useful, I think. I think what helped me was you have like 3 voices, or in my mind you have. I'm not a music teacher. I'm sorry to any expert singers here. In my mind you have like 3 voices. You have like your low, rumbly, like man-sounding voice, which would be like your relaxed, normal talking before you transition. Like for me now, if I relax normal talk, this is how I talk, and it's like my default. And I think even if I was, well, I know if I am very drunk, this is how it sounds, and also if I'm really tired, this is how it sounds. And I don't think I would ever. I'd have to put effort in to go back to the man voice, and I don't actually think I could probably do it anymore. I'm not going to try to, but anyway, you have like that original voice. But even before you start doing voice training, you could, and even if you can't sing, go as if you were to sing. There's 2 other voice like ranges you have. You have like the previous one I was mentioning is called your chest voice, and it's where everything feels like it's vibrating in your chest. And if you talk in that voice, you should feel like quite a lot of vibrations in your chest when you put your hand here. And if you go to sing, you can sing in that like low voice, but there's like, if you go up a bit and you try to sing like the next octave up, there is your head voice. And then if you try and go up again, you can feel like how your vocal cords feel different. And you go into falsetto, which is like when you get like the really high power metal, like singing, or like what Guns N' Roses voice sounds like, or screaming, or sometimes when you get terrible old comedies where cis man pretends to be a woman and does like a falsetto voice. There's those kind of like 3 ranges, and you don't want to be in the chest voice, and you don't want to be in the falsetto voice. You want to be in this head voice. And I found it much easier to get there when I was singing, or when I'd find someone else who is singing and try and sing along with it. Whether you can sing or not, sometimes it can just get your voice into this like if you're gonna hum a note, you could hum the really low one, but also, and you might be able to hum the falsetto one, but also if you just like your voice will naturally go into your head voice, and you'll feel a lot less vibrations when you put your hand here. And so I know some people are saying they can't feel any vibrations when they put their hand here. Maybe their voice is just better than mine, but I still feel a bit, I guess. But I guess I'm just quite a loud person as well. But so you want to get your into your head voice, and it's very hard to do, and it feels weird, and it sounds stupid to you because it's not what you're used to doing and everything. But you literally just have to, and what you can do is just pick one note, like find a note that feels about the right pitch, or listen to some other women talking and try and get the same pitch as them and just hum along like and then just try and talk like this at the same pitch all the whole time as if you were singing, and just really practice that, and just try and do whole sentences like that, read a book like that, read something out, and you kind of get used to being able to do that. And you could do it at higher pitch. Now I'm going to do it like this, and now I'm going to do it like this, and find out where your range is. But then you want to just only default talk in that voice, and you're just going to have to tell people in your life, I'm going to try and change my voice, and it might sound strange, and I would just appreciate it if you didn't like laugh in my face while I'm trying. But also, what can be really helpful is if you have friends or family or someone who's supportive, or even your colleagues, just say, I'm going to try and talk in this voice like this now. And if you notice me slipping back to my old voice, can you just point it out? Because I found that I would start off talking like this and then it would slowly get lower throughout the day. And then someone would point, and I'd be like, whoa, yeah, okay, I need to go back. And then just after a while of that, it just became like normal, default. So yeah, and just remember that it doesn't sound as stupid to anyone else as it does to you, and it's everyone hates hearing their voice, and if you record it and listen back to it, you're going to be like, fucking hell, I sound horrific. And that's just, I think even professional singers have that. I think professional voice actors have that. I think everyone just hates it. But yeah, that's I guess my advice on voice training. I saw one channel that promotes tongue exercises. Was it safe for work? Oh, shit joke. Sorry. Right, okay, we're going to do this last thing and then I'm going to go to bed. Uh-oh. Are we back? I accidentally pressed stop streaming. Because I'm a dickhead. Let me know when you can hear me again. Yeah, digital tuner works. I never went. Okay, great. I definitely stopped streaming for like 10 seconds. Okay, we're good. Okay, great. I'm glad I didn't start the next section already. I've noticed I'm a better singer since I trained my voice, an unexpected but nice side effect. Yeah, I think that's true for me as well. But, I'm not a very good singer. I can sing the notes, it's just the tone of my voice is horrible. Or I think so, anyway. Right. Let's do this last thing. So we have some kind of good news. I mean, it is good news, but it's not like a huge celebration moment. Caster Semenya wins ECHR appeal as sex eligibility case is set to return to court. So what the hell does this mean? So Caster Semenya is a incredible runner who ran in the Olympics, and she is a cis woman, so she is not trans. And she's like one of the fastest people in her category, well, fastest women in her category ever. But she is also intersex, and she was allowed to run in some events, and then she wasn't allowed to run in those same events, but she was allowed to run in some different ones, and then they tried to force her to take hormones against her will in order for her to compete. So as this says, the 34-year-old has been unable to compete in her favored 800 meters since 2019, which was just straight up bullshit. The reasoning for banning her or forcing her to take hormones was just like unjustifiable. So she went to court, and here it says wins ECHR appeal, and we often on this channel talk about the EHRC. And these are totally different organizations with totally different roles and positions, but also totally different goodness values. The EHRC is fucking terrible. It's the Equality and Human Rights Commission in the UK. It's run by someone who hates trans people. The ECHR is the European Court of Human Rights, and this is where Caster Semenya took her case to, and appealed. She won the appeal on the sex eligibility case not having a proper trial in the first place. So that doesn't mean she has now won the whole thing. What it means is they are saying that in the original case in Switzerland, which declared that she wouldn't be allowed to run unless she took hormones, that she didn't have a fair trial, basically. So now the European Court of Human Rights is saying it's got to go back and they've got to do it again. So, track and field athlete Caster Semenya's right to a fair hearing was violated by the Swiss judicial system. The Grand Chamber of the ECHR has ruled. The 34-year-old has been unable to compete in the 800 meters since 2019, following the introduction of limits on testosterone levels for female athletes, and only for female athletes. Semenya was legally identified as female at birth, but has a condition which means her body naturally produces higher levels of testosterone than women without the condition. Which, by the way, is like that sentence. She has a condition which means her body naturally produces higher testosterone than women without condition. It's true for lots of conditions, including like polycystic ovary syndrome. And I sure hope that they aren't banning all women with polycystic ovary syndrome from the Olympics. They aren't. The problem is with all of these things is which what I was hoping to get into next is sex is very complicated and it is not binary, and you cannot just draw a line. And them just attempting to solve all of their problems by just coming up with a testosterone limit just naturally excluded some cis and some trans women in a way that it just shouldn't. And yeah, so anyway, they haven't ruled that Caster Semenya should be allowed to race. What they've ruled is that her right to a fair hearing was violated, meaning she now has to have a fair hearing. She was unsuccessful in challenging World Athletics rules and the Swiss Federal Court, but in July 2023, a lower chamber found her rights had been violated by the Swiss government because it had failed to provide sufficient safeguards for her complaint to be examined effectively. The Swiss government referred the case to the ECHR Grand Chamber in November. It was announced as judges had found by a 15-2 majority that her rights had been violated. So this is positive. I'm pleased that this has gone this way, because it could have gone the other way and then she would have been in a bad situation. However, she didn't win as much as we're hoping she will win in the future. And now she's got to go through more legal stuff, so this is kind of bullshit. So yeah, the Grand Chamber ruled by a majority of 13-4 that complaints under Article 8, so this is the article that gives trans people all their rights, basically, right to respect for private life, and Article 13, right to an effective remedy, and Article 14, prohibition of discrimination, were inadmissible. It found Semenya did not fall within Switzerland's jurisdictions in the respect to those complaints. So, I mean, this feels like a very specific legal argument rather than saying intersex people aren't covered by the right to private life or something like that. So that is why it's just going back to the Swiss court rather than being resolved at this stage. But here, an associate professor in specializing in sports law has said prior to the Semenya decision being handed down that it would be a pivotal moment for how sports engages with human rights in its rulemaking. I don't think this is a nothing case. I think this is definitely very positive, but I don't think this is a big victory, like a grand win. It's just good, and it is a big relief that it wasn't bad. So yeah, the introduction of these tests are designed to ensure only athletes found to be biologically female can compete in the female category, effectively banning trans women and some intersex women or people with DSDs. So they did basically say, here's the rules for what counts as a real woman, and she doesn't meet it even though she is a real woman, which is disgusting, really. Of course, all the gender criticals fucking hate Caster Semenya, and they think she's a man, and they think that she shouldn't be able to have any human rights and shouldn't be able to use the women's toilets and all that kind of stuff. But she is, again, importantly to point out, someone who was born a girl and grew up to be a woman. And there's no reason why she should be banned. She argues that her condition is just like a gift from God, which makes her good at sport. Which I think is the right way to look at it, because no one who wins an Olympic medal is normal. Like, no offense to people who are good at sport, but you're fucking freaks. Not everyone can win Olympics. Like, that's not the point. it already selects for people who are genetically superior in those things. And in fact, Costa Semenya might be one of the best runners in the world, but she's probably terrible at other Olympic sports because she happens to be gifted in one thing and not in the other, because no one's like superhuman. But what, like, the whole point in having these really specific events, like she runs the 800-meter race, that's like her thing. That's not the 100 meters, and that's not like the, I don't know what the longest race is, 10 kilometers or marathon or whatever. Because she isn't as good at those things, because her body is very suited to these like middle distance length races. So it's not like she has some unfair advantage where she's going to turn up and win every single medal at the Olympics. She's literally just good at one event, and she's good at one event, like she says, because of a gift from God. I don't think that God she believes in exists, but it's like a, you know, just how she developed. She just developed differently, and that's true for everyone who's good at the Olympics. Everyone who's good at the Olympics developed differently to most people. And also, in her case, and in the case of a lot of people, against the odds, because in order to be good at sports, you need to be able to practice those sports and train. And in order to do those things, you need time and the space and the case of lots of sports is the equipment. In case of lots of sports, you need the equipment, and it selects for people with more money too. It selects from people from countries where sport is invested in heavily. It selects for men to be better at sports because there's more money in male sports. So for Caster Semenya to not be like a rich white man from the USA who's in, you know, who has things comparatively easier, and then she's got to go up against the fact that she's also discriminated against for being an intersex person and being a woman, and having the international hate movement from J.K. Rowling targeted at her. All these things make it harder, and they do affect sporting performance. So she's done this despite those things, which is incredible. So yeah, I don't agree there's an argument at all here to ban her from sports. And if it came to it and they said, well, we're going to have to draw the line then in a way which bans trans women on principle of them being trans or something like that because of Caster Semenya, I would still support Caster Semenya. I think some people may be slightly nervous that, like, they brought in this rule saying, oh, there's just a testosterone level you have to meet, and that allows some trans women to compete. And if we now say, well, we're tearing it up because it doesn't make sense, because actually it just doesn't, then you might be like, well, now they're going to ban all trans women or something. Like, yeah, they're probably going to try and do that, but that isn't a good reason to oppose what is morally and scientifically correct, which is that someone like Caster Semenya should be able to run or compete in their sport that they're good at. And I think people should, like, you cannot separate this from like gender stereotypes and racism and sexism. Why is it that Caster Semenya is being singled out as someone who has an unfair advantage? Like, as we said in the sentence that we highlighted earlier, she has a condition which means she has more testosterone. So do lots of people. Why aren't they being singled out? At what point do you decide a condition is too much, whereas another condition is a fair advantage? Like, why are one condition a fair advantage and one another, and another an unfair advantage? It's just completely arbitrary. Which is why I think it's bullshit. But that does stumble onto the ultimate issue with sports like this: is sex itself is not binary, and eventually, with enough time, you will have people who are harder and harder to place in one category or the other, in the case where you only have two categories. And you're either going to have to regulate that or let them choose. That's like the only two options. And if you regulate that, it's got to be on something you can measure. And if you pick something you can measure, you're drawing a hard line. And that is inevitably going to exclude and include some people that you don't want to exclude and include. Because biology just isn't a neat binary. That just isn't how human sex, or sex of any animal, really works. But particularly human sex here, 'cause that's what's relevant, obviously. That just isn't how it works. And it's just like trying to draw a line between two colors when one fades into another. Like, I might get this up just to make it easier to explain. So I'm just gonna get up the image editing program that I use for making the thumbnails for my videos. This is GIMP, which I don't know why it's called that. I do know why it's called that. It's the new image manipulation program. It's a garbage name. It's literally called GIMP. It's like Photoshop, but free. It's fine. I think it's all right. So the reason I was going to use this was just to show this, like when colors merge into each other. If we pick two colors, and I'll try and pick two that aren't going to affect colorblind people. So if we pick like red and purple, not red and green. Oops. Okay. So if we just draw like a gradient like this, a smooth gradient, okay? Here I just picked two colors from the color sidebar thing. I've got red and I've got purple. I think we all agree that we've named these colors red and purple, whatever. We've got this like transition between the two. Now, if you ask Dr. Emma Hilton of the gender critical movement, she will say there's only two colors here. But I think everyone else, every rational person, will agree that there's no point along here which you could draw a line. If you wanted to draw a line between these two and say everything on one side is red and everything on the other side is purple, like where the hell do you draw it? Like, well, I guess you might want to draw it in the middle. When we draw this line, but then like, what, is this area here really red? No, I mean, I don't know if this is super obvious, but there's nowhere to draw this line where you can reliably say everything on one side is red and everything on the other side is purple. What's the difference between those two? It's just completely arbitrary. The reason why color isn't necessarily a good analogy for sex is because sex isn't one-dimensional. What does that mean? This here that I've just drawn is one-dimensional. That means that it goes from one value to another value, and there's only one property that changes. We've got like color here, and it's going from red to purple, and it goes through a bunch of other colors. But sex isn't like that. It's not like you have male on one side and female on the other side, and there's just this sliding line. It is multi-dimensional. What does that mean? That means that it's basically like, here you have one property, color, but in terms of sex, you have hundreds of properties. You have some obvious ones like genitals and gonads. For example, if you split on genitals and gonads, with genitals, you have a penis and you have a vagina, but you do kind of have a sliding scale between the two. There are ambiguous genitals where you're like, you can get examples of along the kind of spectrum of those two things. But for some other things, other aspects of sex, you can't really do that. For example, chromosomes. In terms of chromosomes, you have X and Y in various combinations. XX, XY, XXY, XO, XXXY. There's a bunch of different combinations, but you don't really kind of have this gradient between XX and XY. That's not really how it works. But all of these things add up, and it suddenly gets very complicated. But the point I'm trying to make here is, at least some sex characteristics are a spectrum like this, and at least some aren't. None of them are binaries. But when we come to classifying sports, we do end up kind of with a situation similar to this, where we're going to have to draw a line if we want just two categories and if we want to police it. And when we draw this line, I mean, if you kind of abstract it to color with something like this. You say, okay, well, we want to protect the red category. So we're going to say, in order to be allowed to play in a red category, your like RGB values can be no greater than this. And that might draw like a perfect line down here. And as soon as you do that, you're going to have some people here who the purple phobes or whatever, the red phobes, I can't remember what, the color phobes, the people who fucking hate people who aren't at one end or the other, they're going to complain about these people being allowed. And the people here are going to be like, why the fuck are they allowed when we're basically no different? This doesn't seem fair. You're always going to end up with these exceptions. But I think why it's so different with sex is, in this case, it's very obvious that there is this like non-discrete change between the two. It doesn't just go red switch, hard switch to purple. And that's because, like, that's very clear, but that's because I drew this in a way which, like, exaggerated this. That was the point. I stretched it over a long way. With human development, it's much more like is like this. And now to a lot of people, they're like, if you say, especially if you zoom out, how many colors are there? Like 2? Kind of looks like it. And only when you really pay attention and zoom in loads do you basically end up with the same situation as we had before. Though you can start seeing the pixels here. We don't have pixels in human sexual characteristics, but the argument I'm making here is, I think this is why people feel like this stuff is just instinctively true, because the picture they see is like this, where most people they meet are just red or purple, and so they're like, we'll just draw a line between the two, like it's easy, we just draw a line. And then you just draw a line, and they drew a line like this, and they're like, there you go, look, perfect, fucking easy. And then you zoom in and you're like, hang on a minute, you're telling me that this person here is red and this person here is purple, even though these two colors are like basically the same. And this is where you end up with a situation like Caster Semenya, who is banned, and they might just say, oh, that's fine, we'll just move the line, we'll just pick up that line and move it over a little bit like this. But now we just have the exact same situation again. And that is inevitable. Like, this is the point that I'm trying to point out here, is that there is no way to... There's no answer to this. We're not going to discover, oh, here's the true definition of sex. We can just divide everyone into one of two categories now. That isn't possible. So when you're coming up with sporting regulations, this is the facts on which you have to base your whole process on. If you're like, okay, we want to come up with regulations which, whatever trans people, whatever intersex people, you have to start with the facts. And the first fact you have to start with is sex is not binary, and any categorizations you do have to be arbitrary. And that means that you are, if you have strict categories, gonna end up having people on the borders of things. And that is like an inevitable reality of it. The other way is letting people categorize themselves. And I can see why people are adverse to people categorizing themselves at a high level. Something like boxing, for example. Boxing doesn't just have 2 categories. It has, I have no idea how many categories. But they have, obviously, men's and women's boxing. But within those, they also have a bunch of other categories. They have weight classes. And they've just picked it's the same with this. Like, weight is just a spectrum. And they have just picked arbitrary levels. You have to be under 100 kilograms or whatever to enter this level of competition. And in doing so, they had to acknowledge that weight was arbitrary. And they've come up with some rules, and people just fit into them. And maybe at low-level boxing, it doesn't really matter. But when there's like millions of pounds on the line, you can see why people feel like there need to be some kind of categories in these things. Otherwise, people will push the limits on it. If you say, oh yeah, you got to be about under 100 kilograms, someone will turn up as 101 kilograms. The next person will turn up as 102. And then they will start having an advantage over the people who are under the 100 kilograms. whatever. But what's important here is they acknowledged that they needed more than 2 categories, and that's what they've built the whole system on. And so when it comes to something like running, the difficulty is that if you have more than 2 categories, you can end up with a situation like sometimes they're like, oh, just make a trans category for trans people. Right, so you're having a trans only category for the Olympics. There's going to be maybe 1 runner in the world at Olympic level who's a trans person or something. And they will just win everything. And they might be the only person who turns up. They might not even turn up because they know there'll be a load of media hatred at them. It's not feasible to have like a trans only category. And also that doesn't address the whole biology issue anyway. It's just completely nonsense position. But again, if you were to like be like, okay, well, we're going to divide this into 3 categories. We're going to put like the middle ground in a separate category in terms of like testosterone or something like that. It's just not going to work. You can't build these categories in a way that are like intentionally just trying to solve a problem. Just like, oh yeah, okay, well, we've got some exceptions. We'll put them in a bucket. You're going to have to do something like what they've done in boxing, where they've said, okay, weight is a big factor in performance, so we're going to split it by weight. And you might have to say muscle mass is a big factor in performance in this sport, or like the length of your femur or your height or your whatever. They might end up having to be categories. Weight might even be a weight, even classes in other sports. Or you just say, fuck it, some people are just going to get screwed by this. But I think the 2 things that have to be acknowledged are, one, that sex just isn't binary and you're going to end up having to draw an arbitrary line somewhere, or that you don't have to draw a line. Maybe for elite level sports you do have to, but for playing football with your local team in some town, you don't. You don't need a hard line. It's not important. You can just say, if you're a woman, compete. And maybe Caster Semenya is good at football, maybe she's not, because maybe whatever gift she has that makes her good at 800 meters means she's not good at football. So maybe it doesn't matter, and she should just be able to compete in the women's team regardless, because she's not world class at football. Maybe she is, I don't know. No offense to Caster Semenya. But yeah. I guess that's my point on this. I deeply hope that Caster Semenya wins. I hope that she gets full compensation. I hope that people, like women like her, are able to run in the future. I think what she's been through is disgusting. I just think all of those things are true, and I think any system we design should aim to include people like her in it. But also at the same time, I acknowledge that this is inherently arbitrary, and we're going to have to continuously be editing these lines, but we just have to accept that sex isn't binary in order to do that. That's my position. So congratulations to Caster Semenya. I hope she wins the next thing. Right. I've talked for 2.5 hours. I hope that last one wasn't rubbish. I've just kind of improvised the colour thing. It's probably rubbish. Anyway, who cares? Let me know in the comments if it was rubbish. I won't see you same time next week. I will be on holiday. Videos will be coming out on my channel. If you would still like to hear from me, maybe like and subscribe to my channel. And you'll get to watch all of those video clips. There's some that you won't have seen on live streams for a while. It should be good. My Richard Dawkins video will be coming out. That should be good. Share it around and stuff. I was thinking I might be able to do a little bit of a short live stream when I'm on holiday, but I'm not committing to that, and I'm not going to plan it in. But if not, I will be back the week after. So I'll be back on the 30th of July. Same time, 8 p.m. UK. And I will see you all then. So,